Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today it's time for my July TBR. I have 10 books that I want to read this month and 2 hopefuls. My average books per month is around 10, and so I feel like 10 is a good number. I usually get all but a couple done because I always put in a couple of mood reads as well, just because that's the way that it is. I do have 5 buddy reads this month, which is absolutely insane, but I can't wait. I'm really excited about all of them. So without further ado, let's talk about the books. The first book is probably my most anticipated release of the year. I'm really excited to read, and I am buddy reading this with Leandra, and that is A Short Walk Through a Wide World. This is touted as a Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I don't want to say knockoff, but like inspired story where you follow a 9-year-old girl who has something happen to her that would have caused her to die, but she ends up running, and she finds out somehow that as she's running away from it, the traumatic event, she doesn't die, and she determines that if she continues to move, she won't die, but if she stays in one place too long, or if she comes back to a place she's already traveled, she will die. And so she lives her life traveling around the world. And I don't know, it does give me Addie LaRue vibes, and I like the idea of having to figure out how to live life when you can't put down roots. So I'm excited to see what this author does with this story. The next is Pale House Devil, which I am reading with Coda, and I don't know much about this either. I don't really want to look into it because it's only a 3-hour audiobook, so I know it's super short. It's about 2 detectives, I think. One of them is dead, one of them is alive, and they are called to research or try and figure out, determine what type of creature is haunting this house, I think. I think it sounds like a good time, and it's only 3 hours. It is by an author that I also want to read more from, and so I think that this is going to be a good time. The next is Cemetery Boys, which I will be reading with Beatrice, and this book is about a young trans boy who is trying to prove his gender to his family, and in doing so he summons a ghost, and then the ghost won't leave. I think the ghost is originally supposed to be helping him solve the murder of someone he knows, and it ends up being someone different, and then I'm pretty sure they end up becoming friends. I don't know. This has been on my TBR for a really long time, and I think it sounds interesting. And I am a little concerned because I think it's YA, which I've had some problems with YA in the past, but I do know that this author comes highly recommended by a couple of people, and so I am excited to get to this one. Next is another buddy read with Beatrice, which is The Last Murder at the End of the World. This is by Stuart, Turton. I talked about this in my 5-star prediction vlog, and this is about an island where everyone else in the world has died except for the people on this island. The island has some type of security system that's keeping the fog that has killed everyone at bay, but one of the scientists on the island is murdered, and if they don't solve the murder within a certain amount of time, then the security system will fail letting the fog into the island. I know that this author has done some really amazing things, some interesting things with mysteries in the past, with the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and so I'm excited to see what he does next. The next and last buddy read for the month is If I Never Met You, which I will be buddy reading with Leandra and Nell, and this is a romance. I know. Who am I? But I'll be buddy reading it, so even if I don't enjoy everything about it, I will enjoy the experience. But I do think that this sounds interesting. So you have a lawyer who is originally engaged to another lawyer at her law firm, but they end up breaking it off. I think it's pretty traumatic breakup. And that person ends up getting I don't know if it's another colleague or someone else pregnant. And so our main character believes that she needs to amp up her dating game, but she's absolutely terrified of Tinder, which I understand. And so she essentially, I think it's a fake dating thing with like the Office Playboy, if I remember the synopsis correctly, which I think can be fun. I liked the kissing game, which was similar, and so I think that this has potential to be really cute. On to my planned reads. The first two I have for you are for a round of Battle of the Booktubers, and so I'll tell you what they're about, but you won't hear from me for a little bit about what my thoughts on these books are. The first is The Isle of Gods. I'll just read a little bit from the synopsis. This says, Selly has salt water in her veins, so when her father leaves her high and dry at the port of Kirkpool, she has no intention of riding out the winter at home while he sails off to adventure. But any plans to follow him are dashed when a handsome young stranger with telltale magician's marks on his arm commandeers her ship. He is a prince and he needs to cross the Crescent Sea without detection so he can complete a ritual on the sacred Isle of the Gods. But Selly has no desire to escort a spoiled prince anywhere and no time for his entitled demands. What starts as a leisure cruise will lead to acts of treason and sheer terror on the high seas. We'll see what I think. The next one for Battle of the Booktubers is Let the Woods Keep Our Bodies. And I'll just read you a little bit of that synopsis as well because I really don't know much about this book, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because I know that this is a shorter book, if I remember correctly, and I don't want to spoil anything for myself or for you. So this says, in a small town of Easton, Maine, weird things happen sometimes. Leo Bates knows what's behind every corner of her hometown, and she's lived here her whole life. Some disjointed memories and grief from her late parents, sure, but nothing dangerous, nothing unexplainable. I know that there is something also about a missing person and something weird going on in the woods and some conspiracies within this small town. So once again, we'll find out what I think. Next is Rakesfall, and this is another 5-star prediction of mine. This book has two people who go through some type of traumatic experience within a war, and after that their souls are somehow intertwined and they cross time together. So it seems like they can't die, they can't leave each other's sides, and they get to live in all of these different lives with one another. So I don't know. I'm excited about this one. It sounds weird and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. So I am excited to figure out whether or not my vibes for this book are correct. Next is Dreadful. This is another book that I haven't heard anyone talk about, but I'm really excited about it. But I'm also a little terrified because it does sound similar to another book that I just read and DNF'd. So I just want to read you guys this because I want everyone out here to know that this book exists, because it sounds fantastic, and if it delivers, it might be one of my favorite books of the year. This says, a sharp-witted debut high fantasy farce featuring killer moat squids, toxic masculinity, evil wizards, and a garlic festival all at once. It's bad enough waking up in a half-destroyed evil wizard's workshop with no eyebrows, no memories, and no idea of how long you have before the Dreadlord shows up to murder you in a horrible way. It's a lot worse when you realize the Dreadlord is you. Gav isn't sure how he ended up with a castle full of goblins or why he has a princess locked in a cell. All he can do is play along with his own evil plan in hopes of getting his memories back before he gets himself killed. It sounds similar, not exactly the same, but it sounds similar to How to Become a Dark Lord, but I did not like that book. I did not like the delivery. I did not like the main character. I hated reading it because of a lot of things. But I like the idea. It sounds really fun, and so I hope it's really good. Next is The Book of Doors. This is another debut novel, and it's a novel that features a woman who, I don't know if she works at a bookshop or if she's in a bookshop, but one of her patrons, dies right in front of her and is holding, like, the last thing she has of him is this book that he was reading at the time, and it ends up being a really important book. Probably The Book of Doors, what the book is named after. I don't know that for sure. But I think in this series, I don't know if it's a series or if it's just one singular book, but there is a library, a hidden library that keeps precious books from out of the hands of people who would use them for evil purposes. And I think this book ends up being that. And so she gets herself pulled into this kind of craziness trying to protect this book. It gives me a little bit of Invisible Library vibes. If you know that series, I really like. I haven't finished it. I should, which I'll get to that in just a minute. But this does give me Invisible Library vibes. And so I want to give it a try. And since it's a debut novel, I'm excited about that as well. We'll see what I think. Speaking of the Invisible Library, I know I have not continued on with the series this year, and that was one of my goals. My 24 in 2024, the third book in the Invisible Library series is The Burning Page, and so that's what I will be doing. Hopefully, this is one of my hopefuls for this month, is The Burning Page. I do have a harder time finding these books. They're not as readily accessible to me at my library. We don't have very many copies. We definitely don't have audio, so I do have to read them physically. And I've enjoyed the first 2 books in the series. If you haven't heard of The Invisible Library, you follow a character named Irene, who is a librarian at the Invisible Library. And the Invisible Library's purpose is to connect a whole bunch of different dimensions and protect what is important, like the artifacts that are important within those dimensions. And so there's a whole bunch of books and text and things that have made these dimensions what they are. And the librarians sometimes also have to go into these dimensions and obtain artifacts to bring them to the library and protect them. There are dragons, there are fairies, there is kind of a back and forth with dragons and fairies using order. So dragons prefer order, fairies prefer chaos, and you get to see like the political nature of working within both. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun so far. So I'm excited to get back to Irene and see what shenanigans she's up to next. Next and last is My Darling Dreadful Thing. So this is my second hopeful for the month, and I really do hope that I get to this because it sounds fantastic. You follow a main character whose name is Roos, and Roos has kind of an imaginary friend, although I don't really think the person is imaginary. I think that it's like a ghost that she has befriended and absolutely enjoys having around. I believe it's an ancient spirit of sorts. But then Roos ends up falling in love with someone, gets pulled into this other person's, or pulled is a strong word, but like ends up going to live with this other person in their inherited estate where a whole bunch of weird things are happening. A murder ends up occurring and she gets blamed for it, and all these dark things come out about what's happening within the manor. And I don't know, it sounds really spooky, and I need to prepare myself for spooky season. So this is one of the starting of that process for me. So those are the 10 books plus 2 that I do plan on reading in July. Fingers crossed that I get through them all and that they're all amazing. What are you guys planning on reading in the month of July? What are you excited about? Have you heard about any of these books? I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.